it is the models that we use, that you all use as consultants. You're going to be walking us through all of that, and I personally feel that is such a big, giving back that you can do, because you're using these models on a day-to-day basis, and to simplify them for students of our college. I think I'm really grateful for you to take out time for doing this for all of us. Really thankful. So I think we should start the session.
Yeah. Thank you
Sure.
so much, ma'am, for those kind words as well. It's pleasure, like we are over here and we are able to guide all the future consultants as well.
Thank you so much for being here.
Sure. To start off the session, a very good afternoon to everyone present here. Firstly, like I'm really excited to see all of you participating in such huge numbers. So as they say, one should never stop learning because life never stops teaching. 180 DC HR's Consulting 101 series is surely the embodiment of this famous saying. So 180 DC HR College is the first 180 degrees consulting branch in Maharashtra, the undergraduate first consulting branch in Maharashtra. We at 180 degrees Consulting HR College come with a vision of employing unconventional methods to create and sustain diverse business as well as non-business ecosystems. So what exactly is Consulting 101? Consulting 101 is the first training series of 180 degrees Consulting HR College. This series provides a myriad of benefits, such as covering the basics of consulting and prerequisite knowledge for being a consultant. Along with that, it prepares you for real life consulting projects, which we at 180 DC HR College will be taking on soon, followed by your own professional advancement in your respective professional lives. And most importantly, these are conducted by top-notch mentors from top-notch consulting firms and as well as diverse academic backgrounds, which Sharika will go on to explain ahead as she introduces us to today's esteemed mentors.
We are delighted to announce our esteemed mentors Saloni and Kushal Lodha for our first session of consulting. Saloni is a HR alumni and is a chartered accountant who scored All India rank 24 in her first CA final exams and All India rank 46 in IPCC. She is currently working with the Boston Consulting Group. Kushal is a qualified chartered accountant with an All India rank 5. He is currently working in Aditya Birla Group in the corporate finance department and is also a CFL level 3 candidate. We are glad to have you on board. Now, I request our principal, Ma'am Pooja Ramchandani, to grace us with a few words. You need to unmute, Ma'am.
Yeah, as I said, see, they mute us and they don't allow us to speak. So thank you, Sarika, to ensure that I ask you to allow me to unmute. But to begin, happy Holi to all of you. And what a day to inaugurate our first training session for becoming future consultants. And glad to have Saloni and Kushal, who are young budding consultants and working at such great institutes, which is BCG and Aditya Birla, where our students look up to becoming employees there, working there, those institutions, and we get those two stalwarts to come and guide us on how to become consultants. And as I said, a auspicious day of Holi, where we say good wins over evil. We only say HR has everything good. We add more good to it by getting into a new venture of consulting by starting 180 DC chapter. I think Ahan and group of these young enthusiastic children, I never call them as children, but I always call them as brand ambassadors, who I just gave them a brief that we should do something in consulting business. HR has everything, but we are not consulting because we get great students, but your brain is not getting used. And suddenly they show me a 180 chapter and say, ma'am, we are launching it. I said, wait, let us understand the agreements. Will we get some consulting money? Who will pay taxes on the same? Tax guys will kill me. They said, nothing to worry. We have done our entire studies, and they made a presentation, and I said, go ahead. I think last few months that these children have been working, my brand ambassadors, and today on this auspicious Holi day, they are starting with their first training session of how to become consultants. And I can already see more than 60 people joining in. So I'm just crossing my fingers and saying, in next 1 or 2 years, I have to approach them and say, please give me appointment. How do I run my HR college, so and so department and so and so department? So wishing you all the best. And I think I have to mention the mentor, Professor Kanupriya Sharma. I think a team becomes best when you have a mentor who's focused and is giving them guidance. So I think, Kanupriya, hats off to you. Hats off to all my future consultants. And I'm sure Saloni is missing these days. She would have said, why did I pass out so early? I should have been there in today's time in HR college. Saloni, you're most welcome, a part of family. And Kushal, you're a part of family now because you now was going to train us. So now you become a faculty for HR college. So you're a part of family. So wishing you all the best. And I am just hoping that one day we become consultants for BCG and Aditya Birla and they give us some problems that we solve. So wishing and hoping to get Aditya Birla case study to consult and BCG nominating HR college as the best consultants. So with these few words and wishing you again happy Holi. From my side, a little colors of happiness to you all. Wishing you all the best and let the session begin. Let the journey of consultation begin. All the best.
Thank you, ma'am. Thank you so much. Now we request our teacher in charge, Kanupriya ma'am, to grace us with a few words.
Yes, am I audible?
Yes, ma'am.
Yes, okay. So thank you so much for allowing me to speak a few words, because this is a very big moment for me. Being a part of HR college, I used to always observe the tremendous potential that students have. And I take this subject in second year, which is strategic management. And we would end up discussing a lot of case studies, a lot of critical thinking would be done inside the classroom as well. But then obviously there was this lack that I felt, this particular gap that I felt, that the students need to apply these things in real life as well. And when the students of 180DC, the current presidents and vice presidents, when we sat down together and they suggested that we should come up with a branch of 180DC and we should give this platform, which is an established platform, and match it with the brand name that already HR college has, it just creates an excellent merger, and we should take advantage of that. I was all for it, and I would really like to thank our principal, Dr. Pooja Ramchandani, for giving us this opportunity of taking this thing forward and making sure that more and more students are able to understand the nuances of consultancy, the importance of applying everything that they are learning inside the classroom in real situations, real scenarios, which is, I think, a very big gap which will be closed more and more with the trainings that we will do, and then eventually when we conduct the projects and we consult real businesses in the issues that they are facing. I think that will just close the gap and make students also not just consultants, but I think students will become more employable, because once you are solving problems, any business, the goal of businesses is to solve issues, to solve problems. And when students starts to do that in second year, in first year, in third year, they are able to do this so much better when they are actually facing more critical situations, I would say. So I think it's going to be a brilliant journey that, yeah. Okay, I'm really sure it's going to be a brilliant journey for all the 60 participants who are here right now. Please make sure that you make through the whole thing. You will face situations where you'll feel ki अरे आज नहीं, अब आज consultation का नहीं session करना है, but you have to pull through that, because the moment you're done with these 3 sessions, that is the first 3 sessions that we are having, and we'll have much more in the future, you will have a better, the bulb in your head will light up and you will be able to see things in a new light. And that's the role of a consultant, to see things with a new light, with a new perspective, with a new point of view. And congratulations to 180DC for getting this platform for everyone. And really thank you, Principal Dr. Pooja Ramchandani ma'am, for really allowing us to take this forward. Thank you, Sharika.
Thank you, dear. I think she's thanking me. I have to thank her. So in these thank yous, my brand ambassadors are looking at each other and said, "Hum kahan gaye? Kaam to humne kiya." So I think a bigger thank you to my brand ambassadors. I think the students team of Ahan, led by a group of people, and only 4 people are on the screen and others are playing holy, I'm telling you. And hearty congratulations to my brand ambassadors. I think whenever I meet my HRites, I learn something. So as I said, let the journey begin. Up to you, Ahan. Take the journey forward.
Yes, ma'am.
Thank
Thank
you,
you so
ma'am. Yes.
much for those words of encouragement. I think Saloni will with the session. Can you please go to the next slide?
Hi, so a very good afternoon to everyone who's attending here today. Just to give you a brief in terms of how we have planned this session also so that you're all aligned. Kushal and I will be leading the session together. And what we are trying to do and actually bringing out the message in terms is to actually help you understand what consulting is. And we will try and involve as many real life examples to make this real for you. Because the objective here is to actually build on what we have been learning over the years in textbooks and add the flavor of what really goes into your life. How do you actually solve a case interview? What exactly is management consulting or consulting projects when you actually go on a job, join any of the firms like say BCG, McKinsey, Bain, Accenture. There are multiple companies. So with that, we try to cover, I'm just giving you a broad outline so that you know what is it that we're trying to cover. We're first planning to cover the basics of what exactly is consulting, how do you really, what is it that they look case interview? And we'll actually solve that case with you. And from maybe the next session, we will actually try and do a few more case examples. So with that, I start on the video, but any questions, so please with the content. I'm sure if am I audible?
Your voice is breaking a little bit for me at least.
Yeah, it's breaking a lot, actually.
Kushal, why don't you start and I'll just get back here.
Sure. So yeah, hi guys, hello everyone. So as Saloni told that we would be like briefing about the consulting, like what exactly is consulting and what a management consultant does. And after that, he would just give you a small activity of solving a guesstimate so that you also get to know how to solve different type of case interviews when you go for interview in these kind of companies. So I'm not from a consulting background as of such, but then I have like practiced a lot in terms of consulting experiences as such. So I've also solved a lot of case interviews, and I would also be sharing my experience that how was my interview process and what were some of the techniques and some of the steps which I had taken into consideration, which like helped me at least prepare good for the case interviews itself. So consulting is basically like providing expert advice to a specific group of people. So we have to go to a consultant in our daily lives as well. Let's take an example that you are doing some business or startup. So you have to go to a tax consultant in order to determine what your taxability profits would be or what your tax liability would be after you create the startup. So similarly, whenever there's a problem in a company, for example, a company is facing a decline in its profitability, it goes to these consulting firms in order to ensure that why are their profits falling down and what can be some of the steps or some of the measures which can which the company can do in order to augment its profits. So it's like you have to go to a person in order to get consulted and in order to find the root cause of the problem. And after finding the root cause of the problem, consultants would advise you in terms of the solutions so that you can cover up on that problem and proceed in the future. So
Right,
basically
exactly. So,
that's about consulting.
right, exactly like Kushal was saying, and I hope my internet is now better. Um, um, so consulting, if you actually just think of it, you are consulting someone. And if it's a real business coming to you for consulting advice, what is it that you're going to consult on? That can be any issue, like let's say they're facing declining profits, or let's say if they want to launch a new product category. So what is the product that they should be launching, or which geography should they be expanding? So any of those kind of problems is something that, as a management consulting, you're giving them advice on how to manage your business better. And that's pretty much it. So, and I think that's how you perceive consulting in terms of, say, broader language. Yeah.
So, Saloni, now that you were talking about consulting, as we all know, you are from one of the biggest management consulting firms around the globe, which is Boston Consulting Group. So, what we are really excited to know is what your experience has been so far. How does a day in your life look? And just of your experience and something good, interesting you would like to share with all of us, it would be great.
Right. Sure. So basically, let me give you some of the examples of actual cases that I've worked on, and maybe that'll help you understand what is it that we actually solve for, and then how do we go ahead, or what is it that we actually do. So some of the cases that I worked on, and it's been an interesting year thanks to COVID. So let's say I was working for a bank, a private bank, one of the leading private banks in India, where they were facing an issue that their revenue was declining. So there we figured out that why was the revenue declining. Now for a bank, revenue comes from the interest, the loans that they lend, and the interest that they earn on the loan. So then we tried and tried and figured out that what is it that is really leading to the decline in number of loans they're able to lend. We went one level down and realized that okay, today they're able to lend a loan. If someone comes to the bank to ask for a loan, they take 100 days to lend that loan. And we tried and worked on digitizing their entire journey and reducing that 100 days to just 30 days. Because that was a root cause that we figured out is the reason for why the number of loans and hence the revenue was reducing. And hence, how do we really boost that? Now, that was like the first case that I worked on. Then there have been like, I've worked on 5-6 cases in this 1 year in terms of core strategy projects. And there have been multiple other cases, like let's say a company asking like which geography should they start expanding? Where is the demand for the product highest? Or what is it like imagine like an oil city gas distribution player. Someone like at our houses, we get gas pipeline through Mahanagar Gas. So Mahanagar Gas pipeline asking where should they start expanding their footprint in, or should they start entering into, say, setting up petrol pumps also starting tomorrow? Because right now they have only gas distribution. So across sectors, different case experiences. And what we try and do is bring in a thorough industry outlook of what is it outside an analysis. So what is the industry like? What are the profit metrics like? And then we do a lot of benchmarking in terms of, say, what are the best practices that we will contextualize as what is the most suitable for this particular company, and then accordingly give our recommendations. I think that's a lot to absorb, but just to that is like a brief of what we actually do. Yeah, and it's the whole crux of consulting is also, see, everyone, a lot of time people ask that, वो तो खुद industry experts हैं, 20-20 साल से उस industry में हैं, हम उनको क्या advice देंगे? But the idea is that often you miss out on understanding what is the future growth holding like where is the growth outlook in terms of, is it technology advancement, is it being really agile in terms of your product development or so, and you're not looking at what the competitors are doing because you're so full of what has to be done in the company. And the second is also often people who are inside the company may have certain biases that, this is what has worked for my company and this is what will work. And we tend to ignore in terms of the consultants help to bring that outside in perspective. And at times it can be simply a reaffirmation of what the industry folks felt, but that also becomes really important because we help that get synthesized well. Yeah. So just wanted to give you all a very brief, real idea of what consulting is about before we actually start getting into the nuances of how it really works, how do we solve, and what are the strategies to use. Yes.
Just adding on to what Saloni just said. So it's like you are giving an examination of first year or second year or third year. So if you are going to check your own paper, it's like internal evaluation as such. But if you give your paper to someone else, that'll be an external evaluation. So that's what a job of a consultant is. So he would understand the root cause better than a person who's an industry expert, because there might be some biases which will be involved with that industry expert because he has been working from the last 15 to 20 years in that industry. And that's where the crucial role of a consultant comes into picture, to find the root cause of that problem and to give such solutions which won't be possible to be thought by an industry expert himself. So it's like you're just giving your paper to check to some external evaluator and he's giving you feedback in terms of where you need to improve.
Absolutely. Yeah. So let's move on and get into the deep dives of how do you actually solve a case and what is consulting about. Right. Um, so there are two aspects to this. One is that every consulting scenario or a case that you're actually working on will have one problem statement, right? When I said, like, let's say the assignment that I was working on, there was a problem statement that their revenue was declining. Or there may be certain problem statement, like, let's say I was working for an NGO, and there the NGO said that, the number of volunteers that they get is declining. And how do they improve that? How do they provide volunteers a very satisfactory experience? So there is always a problem statement, which can also be called as a case interview or a problem statement or a case question. And now when we say that, what is it that really helps solve those case interviews or a case structure and even any real life cases, like these are the parameters on which we're evaluated even today on ground. And what are these really about? So when you say structured thinking, problem solving, confidence, logical reasoning, they're all basically to understand your business acumen. Like, are you really able to understand what the business process is? What is really the problem? What are they really saying? Or is it just say, like, are you able to contextualize and get to what he's really facing an issue with? Or are you on another level itself altogether? The second important thing is, of course, your thinking structure. Like, how are you thinking? Are you able to say, like, let's say the whole you know waterfall of, how do you break down the problem and really arrive at what exactly is the crux of the problem? Like, let's say the client is telling you at 10,000 feet that, I'm facing declining revenue. You have to think logically that, okay, if there is a bank which is facing declining revenue, then what is the bank's revenue driven by? Or let's say if there's any, let's pick up an easy example. A bank's revenue structure looks a little complicated. If you take of any FMCG company, let's say chocolate manufacturing company. Now, a chocolate manufacturing company, like let's say Dairy Milk or Mondelez. Now, if they say that they're facing declining revenue, you start thinking the revenue is driven by the number of products that they're able to sell and the price that they're able to command. Then you start thinking within products, they have different product categories. Is there a particular product category where it's going down, or is it going across products, or is the price going down? So this is how you actually think, like in terms of structured thinking of what you actually drill down in terms of having an entire exhaustive structure which says that, okay, there are these products, there are these prices, that totally adds up to making a structure. And then you also have to solve the problem in terms of, okay, if it's not the product category, then is it the price? Or if it's this product category, then within this product category, what is going wrong? Is it the market? Is it the quality of the product? Is it the packaging of the product? Is it the channel where I'm distributing? So that's how you actually go down one layer across as you solve the problem. And logical reasoning is something that has to be inherent. Like, let's say if I'm trying to seek any information, any conversation with any client, if I'm not logical or able to stand across to what I have really asked, like let's say I ask client, ki, bhai, give me the data of which products are you engaging in and what has been the overall revenue product wise. And he asks me, why do you need it? If I don't have a logical backing for something as simple as that, as to why I'm asking, then that really comes back on you in terms of not having thought through your problem. And all of these real life situations is something exactly that replicates when you even solve an interview question or any problem statement or any case. And of course, communication and confidence is definitely important, because that is something, as long as you're not able to communicate what you're thinking, it all bottles down, right? Because if you've made any inherent assumption that the other person, the client, is not aware of, then they're not going to be able to follow what you are saying. So all of these parameters together, whether in real life or in just a case problem or question or interview, they become very important. And this is what is tested. Like, whenever there is a question coming up saying that, there is a declining revenue, or, estimate the number for XYZ, no one really wants to know what is the final answer, because no one has an answer. Even the client doesn't have an answer today. They just need to be convinced by your approach and each logical step that, what you are saying is well thought through, what you are actually guiding the way you are is all making sense, and you have your facts backing it. So that is how you think of it. moving on. Let's go to the
Yeah.
next slide. Yeah.
So basically, the most important skill in like in getting into a consulting company is that you should be inquisitive enough. So this is the most important skill, that you should ask why to every particular scenario. So for example, if a client comes to you and he says that there's a decline in profitability, you should ask yourself why there's a decline in profitability, whether it is a reduction in selling price or reduction in the number of units sold. If it is reduction in number of units sold, then why is there a reduction? Whether it is a supply problem or a demand problem. If it's a supply problem, whether it's a production problem, distribution problem, or retailer problem. So there, like, you have to deep dive into each particular segment. So this is called as segmentation, and you will be able to deep dive only when you are curious enough to ask yourself, why is this happening? So this is one of the most important like skill which will help you in order to get into consulting companies. Now moving on to the next part, which is what differentiates a good case solver from an average one. So there are four parts to it. The first one is that the ability to draw inferences. So whenever a case is given to you, you should have the ability to draw what are the inferences from this particular case. You should be able to ask clarificatory questions initially itself, so that you don't go like apart from the case what is expected. So you don't go out of the expected approach which is to be taken in solving that particular case. For example, if you are asked to estimate the number of burgers sold in a McDonald's, you should ask clarificatory questions right at the outset, whether it is the McDonald's in the city or whether it is the one at the airport. So these are some of the clarificatory questions which you should which you should ask. Let's take another example. If a particular case interviewer asks you estimate the number of taxis in Mumbai, what are few of the clarificatory questions you can ask is that whether Uber, Ola, these taxis are also included, or only black and white taxis are included in this particular question. So, if you ask these type of clarificatory questions, that will help you in order to approach and structure the case much better way as compared to a candidate who does not ask these clarificatory questions. So that is ability to draw inferences from the case. The next is the drill speed. So it's very important that you cover the entire case in the given amount of time as well. So it's not like you have to speed yourself up in order to complete the case within the given time. It's like the interviewers are going to test whether you're able to structure and get to the final answer within the given amount of time. So basically, you should take a couple of minutes maybe to structure down your thoughts. If a particular case is given to you, you have the next 30 minutes to solve that case. So ideally, the interview would run for 25 to 30 minutes, and it is not expected that you answer immediately whenever the question is asked to you. So at the same time, you have to ensure that you at least finish off the case within the given time of 25 to 30 minutes, because the interviewer's time is also very important, and you have to ensure that you give him some logical recommendation or solution to the problem which has been given to you. So that is the next ability which differentiates a good case solver. The next one is very important, originality in structures. Now, let me tell you one thing initially itself. If you go for a consulting interview, or if you have anybody who's assigned to you, each and everyone is going to tell you that structure your case. That is the only problem which you're facing. Structure mein gadbad hai, tu structure hi nahi kar pa raha hai. So if that is a thing which is not going correct, then trust me, that's a very, very huge drawback, because that is the basic thing of consulting. You have to structure down a particular problem in your own thoughts, and you have to structure it in a very logical and in a very proper flow, so that once you commence your interview, once you commence the case, and once you commence your way of approach, that time you will be able to know that your structure has helped you in order to commence your entire interview. So that is one of the most important thing, that you should take at least 2 minutes to structure down your thoughts, write them on a piece of paper, draw down the structure on a piece of paper, and explain the interviewer what you have thought in those 2 minutes for the next 25 to 30 minutes. So basically, originality in structures is a thing which will differentiate a good case solver from an average one. If your structure is not appropriate and is not up to the mark the interviewer is expecting, then that is going to be a problem for you in order to get into consulting. So structuring any particular case scenario and any particular problem is of utmost significance. And the last one, which is popularly called as MISI. So it is a jargon which is used in consulting, and it is very well recognized. So it stands for mutually exclusive and collectively exhaustive. So what does this mean? That you have to approach a particular problem in such a manner that you cover each and every aspect of that particular problem. So can you just go to the next slide, Ahan? It has been covered there in the next slide. So basically, it is a principle used by management consulting firms to describe a way of organizing information. So again, as I gave you an example of the decline in profitability of any particular company, you have to go to the root cause of that problem. And how will you go to the root cause of that problem? By segmenting the information into correct blocks. So as I told you that if there's a decline in profitability, whether it is due to revenue or cost, first you have to ask this question. If it is due to revenue, then price or volume. If it is due to volume, then where is the problem lying? It is in the, if it is in the production side or the retailership side or the customer side, if the customers are only demanding less. So there was one case interview which was given to me, that basically a chocolate manufacturing company is facing a decline in its profitability. And the main reason of that particular decline was that the boxes, the retailer sells these chocolates in some boxes, and that particular box was kept towards the end in that retailer shop. And that's why people, like customers who used to come to that particular shop, they didn't used to see the chocolates as such, and they used to buy the chocolates which were visible to them upfront. And that was the main reason that these chocolates were not pushed from the retailer side, and that's why customers were not buying those chocolates as such. So you have to ask, if it is a revenue side problem, then volume problem, then it is a retailership problem. So basically you might be giving less margins to the retailers as compared to the margins which are given by your competitor. So you have to ask these type of questions. You have to segment the problem very exclusively and exhaustively, so that you don't tend to miss out on any particular aspect. So mutually exclusive is that you cover each and everything. Items can only fit into one category at a time. So it should be exclusive. If it is into revenue, then you shouldn't focus on cost. You should focus on revenue aspect itself. And it should be collectively exhaustive at the same time. So if you're focusing on revenue, you should make sure that you have covered each and every aspect of the revenue side. So this was a simple example of a profitability case. There might be examples of market entry cases or some other pricing cases as well, where you have to adopt this particular approach, which is going to help you in order to solve a case in a logical manner, in a proper manner, so that you don't tend to miss out on any particular aspect.
Right. And I think, if you just go back to the previous slide once, I will, now that, Kushal has explained you what MISI is in depth and even all the other four aspects. If you just think of it very practically from a client's perspective, let's say, like, as he said, the question or problem statement can remain the same, but what differentiates you from the client who has already spent 20 years in that industry? That is the ability to draw inferences and actually cover all aspects. Because let's say, the difference, why the inferential part or the insight part is so important, because the client also looks at his data every day. He looks at his MIS data, he looks at all the data, or he has this fragmented information. So let's say he says, Ari, last month the production line broke down, or he says, oh, in Gujarat this market has not been performing, because I have the data which says that across markets how is my sales, or there is something that happens in every company every month analysis. Now, where is your ability, or what is the value add that you are doing? Your value add is to link the dots, to draw out an inference that, okay, probably last month because your production line broke down and the market where, and this was a factory which was actually supplying to Gujarat's market. And hence there was a delay in delivery time. And you, despite having the best shelf space, like let's say in DMart, yours was the best display value, the problem which Kushal just said. But everything happened, but your chocolates did not reach on in time, and then the store was facing an issue as to where to even place the products. So it's about how do you draw inferences, and hence the store then started say deprioritizing because it wasn't reaching. So now this is an inference that you have to draw out, which probably a client is not realizing, because they work in different structures. Like every organization is divided into so many different parts. Now, as a consultant, you really get down onto your shoes and you start inferring that across departments, how do I sync in everything? How do I see it across the value chain? And then realize where the problem lies. Now, even when I say, Kushal mentioned MISI, now it seems like a jargon or even say a structure. The reason why they're important is that had you not covered the entire value chain, or had you not looked at every part of the problem, then you may end out missing on that, and maybe that's exactly where the problem lies. And hence you will never be able to then decipher that what is it that really needs to be solved for. And you may end up doing something, taking some steps, recommending steps which will not really result in any incremental value, because that really never was the problem. And hence when you say, like, even say in revenue or profitability, or let's say if it's a market share problem, like a client is facing declining market share in their chocolate industry. So then you actually start looking at it in terms of, how are they doing against competition across every aspect? Like, let's say, is the production fine? Is there production to the warehousing, fine. Is the warehousing to distribution, fine. Is the distribution to marketing, branding, fine. If it is a product like car vehicles, is there after sales, fine. So you have to cover every aspect of it, because if it's not exhausted, then maybe it lies in a part which you never covered. And hence that becomes really important. So yes, let's move on. Just wanted to give you a real life example, and yes, let's move on now.
Yeah, right. So next we'll just cover briefly like what are some of the type of cases which are usually asked in a case interview. Can you go to the next slide, Ahan? So there are a lot of case and like a type of case studies which can be asked. So usually like a particular person has to go through 3 or 4 rounds or maybe 5 rounds of case interviews in order to get into any consulting company, at least the top 3 companies. So he can get different type of cases in all the case interviews. And one case interview would approximately last for 25 to 30 minutes. So these are some of the type of case interviews. So just I'll brief you about all the case interviews one by one. The first one is the guesstimates one, which is now commonly asked across all the firms. So I'm not telling only about the consulting firms, but now it's like people want to see how you structure a particular problem in almost every company. So even these like other FMCG companies or other industry companies, they also ask these type of questions in an interview. So what is a guesstimate? You are just given a random problem and you are just asked that what according to you would be the estimate of this number. As I told you, they can ask you estimate the number of taxis in Mumbai, estimate the number of Uber, Ola cabs in Mumbai. Now one guesstimate which was given to me, this was like very unconventional and I was just astonished when this was given to me. I was just surprised like how will I approach this problem. So my buddy had given me this particular case that estimate the number of golf balls in air in India in 1 second right now. So basically, I had to estimate how many golf balls are in air right now in India. This was the
I'm
case
still
study which was given
figuring
to
out
me.
the answer to this one.
Yeah, sure. So basically, these were the guesstimates which were given to me, and trust me, like they just want to check how you approach the problem, how you approach these particular guesstimates. So of course, no one can have a correct answer to the guesstimates. What they're looking for is that whether you structured on the problem and what is your thinking process throughout the entire case interview. That is most important in guesstimates. So one more guesstimate which was given to me was estimate the number of golf balls which can be fit in a Boeing 747 airplane. So this was also one of the guesstimate. Or one very unconventional and a very funny one which was given to me was estimate the number of poha particles in one plate. So if you're eating poha in a plate, estimate how many poha particles would be there in one plate. So these are the type of unconventional questions which, when given to a candidate, he would be completely surprised as to how do I approach this particular problem. So for example, if just explaining about the poha particle, what should be the structure is that you have to follow this structure, that you have to calculate the volume of that particular plate. You have to calculate the volume of one poha particle. You have to estimate, and you just have to divide the volume of that particular plate by the poha particles. So this is a structure which you should follow in order to estimate these kind of answers. The next one is profitability case. So profitability is nothing but that a client has approached you and he has asked you that there is a decline in my profitability from 20% to 10%, or it has gone into losses. What should I do? So these are general profitability cases, and I think that these are one of the most common ones which are usually asked in an interview. So you just have to ensure that you have to split it into two parts, revenue and cost, and then you have to delve down into both of them separately. So there might be cases where there are problems lying in both the side, revenue as well as cost. And there might be cases that there might be only problem in some customer demand side in the revenue aspect. So you have to ensure that you ask the questions correctly so that you get to know where the problem lies. The next case is market entry. So market entry case is a simple one wherein you have to just advise the client whether you should enter this market or not. So cases like would be given to you like whether we should enter this particular segment or not. So if Aditya Birla Group approaches BCG or McKinsey or any particular company, it will ask whether we should enter the paints business as of now, whether we should enter the chemicals industry as of now. So these are some of the questions which the client would ask to the consultant, and you have to ensure that you follow a very exhaustive and exclusive approach in a market entry case as well. So in a market entry, you have to like figure out on both the financial as well as the non-financial aspects. So in terms of financial, you have to advise whether it would be profitable according to you. And if it is profitable, then you go to the non-financial aspects as well, whether it is actually possible to enter into this market. So for example, you have to consider factors like how is the competition in this market? How are the customers behaving? What is the industry structure? How many companies are there? Whether it is a monopolistic, oligopolistic, or a perfect competition market. whether it will be possible for me to produce these many number of units if I enter into this new market. What would be the distribution challenges? How would I market this product so that it reaches to the end consumer? So these are some of the non-financial aspects which you also need to take into consideration while evaluating any market entry case. The next one, which is market share, it can be similar to a profitability case. So market share case is that the client would approach you and he will ask you that the market share of his company has been declining steadily over the last 5 to 10 years. It has gone down from 30% to 20% or from 30% to 10%. And then you have to analyze. So few questions which you should ask here are that how do you measure the market share? So, like companies would measure market share in terms of revenues, or it can be in terms of number of units sold. It can be in terms of capacity as well. If it is a cement company, how much capacity every company has, that might be a market share metric as well. So you have to ensure you ask those type of clarificatory questions so that you know how the market share of this company is measured. So for example, if the interviewer says that it is measured through revenue, so you know that your revenue is either decreasing or it is increasing, but at a decreasing rate as compared to your competitors. So you have to ask this question, that whether it is decreasing or whether it is increasing at a decreasing rate. So if it is decreasing, then there's a problem with your own company. If it is increasing but at a decreasing rate, it means that your competitors have adopted some new technology or something new which has helped them to grow their revenue and your revenues aren't growing. So you have to ask these type of questions so that you get to know where the problem lies. The next one is a mergers and acquisition one. So this is basically you have to acquire a particular company. So whether you should acquire this company or not, this would be the case which would be given to you. Again, you have to consider all the financials as well as the non-financial aspect of this particular case. What are the synergies which would be available to me through this particular merger? What are some of the challenges which would happen in this merger? Regulatory challenges, whether there would be sufficient demand if I merge. Then what are some of the revenue synergies, cost synergies? Where can I save my costs? Where can I add on to my revenue? Whether this synergies which I am benefiting, whether this would outweigh the cost, the premium which I'm paying to buy that particular company. So again, you have to divide this into two parts, financial and non-financial, and then you have to approach this particular case of mergers and acquisitions. So just to highlight about mergers and acquisitions, even all these big companies, they have their in-house department for M&As. So I worked in corporate finance department of Aditya Birla Group. But again, there are companies who approach these consultants as well in order to check whether we should actually acquire M&A, which we should actually acquire this company or not. The reason being is that the internal department would get to know whether the NPV and IRR of this project is feasible or not. But a consultant, once again, he would analyze that problem from a very different point of view and from a broader perspective in order to compare the financials as well as the non-financial aspect of this acquisition. And the last one, which is the most interesting one, and it might sound scary as well, it is the unconventional one. So in this particular case, the interviewer can ask you any particular thing. So if by any particular thing, I mean anything. So let me give you an example, and you would be shocked to hear these kind of examples as well. So I was asked this particular case that imagine that you have found a Godzilla in a zoo. What would you do with that particular Godzilla? So he's a dinosaur, and what would you do with that? So these are the type of case interviews which are given and which come in the unconventional category. One more case interview in the unconventional category which was asked to me was that imagine that your client is a BCG partner and he is reaching his office 30 minutes late daily as compared to the last week. So what do you think is the problem and why do you think he's reaching late? So these are the type of unconventional interviews which are asked. And again, here they are checking whether you are able to structure down your thoughts and whether you are able to exhaustively think the entire problem and not just try to learn the cases and try to just keep on guessing what can be the problem. So one sincere advice here would be that it is never recommended to learn any type of case. This is the biggest mistake which most of the students make, is that they try to solve so many cases and they try to learn the solution. So they'll just try to see that this is the solution. Okay, if this particular problem is asked to me, I think that this is the solution. So he'll ask that particular problem itself. So for example, if a chocolate manufacturing company has faced a decline in its profitability, then the interviewee would have in his mind that हाँ मैंने पढ़ा था यार कि वो उसके जो boxes थे वो retailer ने पीछे रखे थे. So if he asks this question directly to the interviewer, that whether it is a retailer problem or whether the boxes are kept somewhere different in the retailer shop, then the interviewer would quickly catch you that he has learned this particular case. So that is not at all recommended, and you have to ensure that you just develop the ability to structure a problem and then solve it rather than just learning the solutions to what learning the solutions to the problem which has been given to you. So this would be my sincere advice.
I think that was superb, Kushal. I think you covered everything so exhaustively and gave all so many examples that I am still baffled and amazed at how you remember so much. Uh, but I do think that, like Kushal said, the fact that you have learned it also makes you also biased. Then what differentiates you from a client? Because now you have your own biases that probably this is what the problem is. And not otherwise. So that's the whole point. And this goes back to the previous point that originality of structures, preparing your framework, that becomes really important. And also, yeah, even I've had certain interesting unconventional cases where I was asked that you are in a committee that is recommending the prime minister uh, and whether they should be giving a grant or loan to Korean government. So how do you decide or what are the factors that you're going to consider? So, so see, the whole idea is that, you really need to think it well. You need to structure, you need to put yourself in that shoe and then start thinking that what can be the whole landscape of questions or considerations or choices that I have. Like think in terms of optionality or possibilities possible and then start bottling it down or figuring it, taking it one by one. Yeah. And another aspect that I just wanted to highlight is that, as you practice more case interviews or even say spending time on ground working in consulting, all of this problem solving skills and all of that, it is not purely just for say that case. It realize you change as a person also. Like even at home now, I realize that if my mom is worried about something, I can actually say, okay, wait, let's take a pause. This is exactly the problem statement. And these are the parts that are probably relevant. These are probably not the relevant parts. So let's ignore this. Let's solve only these two questions. And for these two questions, these are the possible options. And this is what is in our control. This is what is not in our control. So now this is what we solve for. And this is how it can be solved because this is how. So you start structuring for everything. And that is what is actual growth, or you start realizing that, okay, this is how it has helped you a long way.
Right.
So yes.
And just adding on to what Saloni said, so basically, once you start practicing so many cases, automatically the ability to structure your cases, it becomes it becomes better after you practice cases. And one more thing is that once you practice these cases, your mind becomes exactly like a consultant. So whenever you go, wherever you go, even in your personal life, if someone asks you a personal advice, you will like solve that particular case as if it has been given to you in an interview itself. So the most important skill over here is that your observation abilities should be very, very sharp. And wherever you go, you should observe things and you should try to just ask yourself, okay, why is this like this? Why isn't this placed in this manner? So you should keep asking yourself that why is this happening this way, so that your curiosity is increased and you get to know the reason of that particular problem. So for example, I had met my buddy in Infinity Mall in Starbucks to solve a case. And before that itself, he had given me a case that estimate the number of stores in an Infinity Mall, in Malad Infinity Mall. So this was the case which was given. And the next day when I went to that particular mall and I was just analyzing, okay, so I never observed what might be the area of a store, how many stores are there in a mall itself. So this was the case which was given. And after that, I realized that wherever I used to go, okay, I used to have this thing in mind. I have to observe things and I have to see why is this happening this way only, whether it can happen in some different way. And if yes, what can be that way? So this is how your brain is trained through a consulting interview.
Right.
Yeah. So Ann, can we go to the next slide?
Right. So these are the tools and strategies that are usually applied, say, even when you're working. These are some of those that you've actually learned in your strategic management course as well. I'll briefly touch upon. We will actually start applying them directly in cases than actually going through the theory part of it. So let's move on to the next slide and see what Pareto is. Now, this is something we have read so often, right? It says 80-20 principle. Now, the way we solve it in our textbooks or even say in costing questions, if you're studying C or anything, is that we pick up what are the, like it's an ABC analysis, something similar to ABC. That these are the 80% items, these are the 20% irrelevant items, hence 80% items become more important. Now, if you actually think of how it is applied in real life, now 80-20 is something that we apply every day because let's say you have a huge quantum of data. You have a data which is spreading through 10,000 rows. But you then realize as you're analyzing that the top 100 rows form 80 crore of the value, whereas the bottom 900 rows are forming 20 crore of the value. So then you realize that, okay, this is 20 crore is something that I can ignore and not strain myself spending 40 hours on that when it is not so material? That is from a simple data analysis part, because that's not going to materially change my analysis ka answer. And hence you start realizing where to direct your efforts and where not to direct your efforts. In other example I can say is, let's say if like I was solving a problem, or I was working on a case where we were trying to reduce costs for a client. And there they said, we want to figure out if we can, if, who are our best vendors, who are our best suppliers, like from whom are we purchasing, and are we purchasing at a higher cost or so. Now they had just 7 large vendors, and then a whole long tail of vendors, that is what is the term used, of long, so a long tail of 70, 80 vendors who were covering only 6% of the value. Now I spent, and I had just started off, so I spent like 3 days analyzing all of the vendors and just, literally slogging off. And my manager kept saying that, what is taking you so long? What is taking you so long? And I said, this manager is so harsh on me. I've been working for 18 hours a day. And then he realized that, okay, he's like, why did you even end up analyzing 87 vendors? You had to just pick up top 7. Because what do I do of the rest 20 or 6% value vendors? I can simply ignore. They are not relevant. So this helps in your drill speed as well. So even in a case if you're solving or any client problem, you realize that this is something that is so immaterial a segment that I can literally ignore. Let's say even if you're doing a profitability question and we realize that this product is not performing well, but this product was anyways always supposed to be a 1 rupee product, or was supposed to be not the major contributor, then can I just ignore that and consider this was always going to be a bonus item and not my core? And hence it's okay to just focus on the core. And that's how you start thinking, when you solve cases, when you're on ground, you realize that all those principles or matrix that you have studied all your life are actually applicable in real life, and they're so real, but it's just about realizing how they get applied. Uh, and that realization will really make you feel very proud that you've actually studied and maybe concentrated on some of your early age concepts, but it's about realizing. So let's move on to the next one. Process mapping is fair. I mean, see, this is basically, it talks about push or pull, which is like, say, supply side, demand side, or any process where we say there's an input, then there is a process, there is an output, there may be certain wastage. But in simple terms, if I was to say, how would I analyze or apply this also in terms of push or pull, or what is the process, is to actually think about the value chain and see that, okay, was the problem in the production? If it's in the production, then is it because of labor? Is it because of your labor quality? Is it because of what? So what is it, the machinery? Is it because of the wastage handling? Is it because of, you start going on to the bottommost aspect of it in terms of every part of the process. And when you say push and pull, it's also the demand and supply side. So if I say that my revenue is declining, or the number of products that someone is purchasing is reducing, then you start figuring out, is it a demand issue? Like, are the customers not purchasing it enough? Which is when you realize it's a distribution problem. That is it, where is it placed? Is the display value, shelf placement, or the packaging also, like if it's not attractive enough? Like, let's say, maybe why do you differentiate between a Navratan Tel and something which is like, say, a Kama Ayurveda oil product? Maybe they have the same content, but you may think it's so fancy to use Kama Ayurveda. And a part of it is just because of branding or the way they market or the labeling of the product. And these are things as users we generally don't tend to observe. Like, how many times have you actually found yourself reading the contents of a soap? They are all the same. What is differentiated is just the aesthetics part of it and the packaging. So that is basically a demand issue or a push issue or a pull issue. The push is basically the supply part of it, that, are you not able to meet the demand, or are the retailers, like, let's say, because these are coming through retailers or your nearby kirana stores, are they facing issues in terms of storing a product or getting product on time, or, just in terms of how do you manage your vendors, prices, logistics? And if they feel hassled enough, they will not sell, because as an end consumer, you purchase, if you go to a shop, and if someone says that, this is a wonderful product that has now come up, you should definitely try. As an end customer, you might, get influenced. So there's a lot of power that they hold also. And hence, even the supply side has to be really managed well in terms of, the incentives that you give to dealers across the chain. And that's how you start applying these concepts. The next one, if you look at, is a GE matrix. And it's a, okay, so imagine, the visual would have helped. But imagine this is a 3 by 3, like a 9 box matrix, like high, medium, low, high, medium, low. So the high and high become your priority. The medium become like maintain or a yellow sign, and a low and low becomes red. And that's how you think of it. Now, again, this seems like such a textbook concept, right? A 3 by 3 matrix or a 2 by 2 matrix. And we've been studying these kind of things right from 10th standard. Now, how do you apply this in a business scenario? Now, imagine if one of the axis, like let's say, let me try doing this. And of course, I'm going to be a little horrible. Okay, I am not able to annotate here, but one second. Okay, I can't draw. So I was trying to draw, but it's okay. So imagine that there's a 2 by 2 matrix, or imagine on one axis, on an x-axis, you're analyzing what is the competitive strengths. And on y-axis, you're looking at what is the industry sense. So if the industry outlook is very positive and their competitive strength is also very positive, together high and high means that they'll have a very high market share and they're probably going to be the leaders, hence invest. Or, hence they are going to be the best leaders. And, this is how you start applying. And it can be across anything. It can be across what is the opportunity versus right to win. And this is something we do in every case that we work on for every client. That, this is the attractiveness of the opportunity that lies in the industry. Let's say even in terms of which geography should they start expanding to, or which product. So I say that, okay, this geography is definitely attractive in terms of the demand, in terms of profits and all of it. But is my client having a right to win there, or what is their competency? Like what can they do best? Do they have an existing strong customer base in their existing products, or do they have some location advantage? Are they going to have some cost advantage? What is their right to win? Because only then you can succeed. Otherwise, there are existing competitors who might do better. So that is the metrics. Next, I think, and there are many tools and strategies, but we'll probably cover them in the subsequent sessions as we actually solve cases. What we wanted to do with you all today, let's move on to the next one, was actually try solving one guesstimate. Okay, maybe we can skip this and when we actually come to the case solution, because in the interest of time, we have some questions also. So let's move on to the next slide. Yeah. And Kushal, maybe you want to lead on to this one. The objective is like, let's understand one case structure really deep and solve one question together so that we really get hands-on to how to deal with it. And we'll try and keep the last 10 or 15 minutes for questions later. Yeah.
Yeah. So guys, like as I told you about the guesstimate, so basically it is like you have to estimate a particular thing, and the important part is not the answer, not the correct answer, but the structure and the way you approach that particular problem. So we have one particular guesstimate for you. So just like we'll want you to know how, like we want you to ask how would you approach this particular guesstimate. So the guesstimate is that estimate the number of schools in Mumbai. So this is the guesstimate. So first, just like when I'm asking you this particular guesstimate, Ahan, can you just go to the next slide? So when I'm asking you this guesstimate, I just want you all to think about some of the clarificatory questions before you start structuring your problem. So the most important thing after a case is given to you is that you have to ask 3 or 4 clarificatory questions so that you can structure your problem. And once you've taken a couple of minutes to structure your problem, then you have to take the interviewer through the structure which you have thought in those 2 minutes. So this is the guesstimate which we are giving, that estimate the number of schools operating in Mumbai.
And let's solve this together. So why don't you take like 2 minutes? That's best. Like you can put it on the chat box.
You can put it in the chat box. Yeah.
And also if you have any thoughts, let's take 1 or 2 minutes and then we cover all of this together.
Right.
I'm loving the engagement. Thanks. That's really positive and encouraging.
Right. So we have some answers. So both government and private. Yeah, that's a very relevant question. Private schools or all schools? Does it include all schools like play schools, etc.? Again, amazing. That is a very relevant question. Non-profit schools as well. Yeah, whether you will include only the profit schools or the NGOs as well. High school or preschool, that has been covered. Population, I think population would come into your structure part and not in your clarificatory question. Once you get into the structure, then you will take the demographics into consideration. The next question is those Mumbai school college thing as well. Yeah, again, a very relevant question. You have to get it clarified whether 11th and 12th, whether they are also included in the schools or we are only considering from grade 1 or maybe nursery to grade 10. So that's very apt. Like I think all of you are
So,
going to get into one of the best three consulting firms, given the answers which you're telling.
right. So, let's do one thing, Kushal. Let me be the interviewee here, and you can be the
Yeah,
interviewer here. And maybe I will try, but I don't really remember all of this. Let me just try, and I'll pick it up from the chat. I'm just going to be the voice of everyone who's putting it on the chat and the way they're thinking. And maybe you can start
okay,
answering, and that will help. So, the
sure.
first question is,
So,
do we cover
so,
the
uh,
government
so
and private?
I am the interviewer, right?
Yes, yes.
Yeah, okay,
Because
sure.
I'm asking you all questions from the chat,
Yeah,
and you
okay,
can
sure.
answer.
Yeah, sure,
Yeah.
sure.
So, are we covering all government schools
Yes.
or private? All
Yeah,
schools.
we are covering all the schools, government as well
And
as
does it
private.
also include colleges or it does not?
No, so basically it will include from your junior KG to grade 10.
Grade 10. Okay,
Yeah,
that's helpful. Thank you.
yeah.
And then in terms of, is there any bifurcation that I should also be looking at in terms of, say, state boards or private boards? Nothing of that sort, I would
No
assume.
bifurcation as such. Like
And
all the boards would be considered.
even in terms of medium of instruction.
Right, right.
Okay, that's very helpful. Sure. And just to understand another aspect that comes to my mind here is that um, are these schools like, let's say, even those which are NGOs or those which are funded, all
Right,
of
right.
those? So
Good question,
basically,
Saloni. So these schools are like NGO funded plus the normal schools as well.
got it, understood. So basically, we are saying I have to consider all sort of schools that are in Mumbai from standard 1 to standard 10. And
Junior
for
KG to standard 10.
junior KG to standard 10.
Yeah,
Sure, thanks. Thanks for the clarification. And it is across all mediums of instruction, whether it is private or government. Okay,
right.
that's helpful. And can, is it fair to assume that when we say it's Mumbai, it'll be, say, within, say, can I assume like Dahisar to Churchgate, kind of the western line overall?
Yeah, so you can assume Mumbai from Borivali to Churchgate.
Borivali to Churchgate. Okay,
Yeah,
that's again very important and that's helpful. So
yeah.
let me take a few minutes to structure my thoughts here, because that
Sure,
really helps clarify. Um, I think
sure, sure.
so.
Take your time.
Sure. Yeah. Thanks. Now, guys, I need your help because we are
Yeah,
structuring the next part of the case, which is, so we have our initial clarifications. So, Saurav, see, your question is valid. That does the school include religious institutions like um, madrasa or pathshalas and jain? So, let's assume that these are authorized schools, but across all any educational institution that someone is going to.
right.
Yeah. But you also have to have a backing. Like, let's say there are some of the questions which I did not ask. Like, let's say Mumbai includes Navi Mumbai, or one or two questions because I need to know the reason behind asking. Like, if I don't, if like the interviewer may ask me, like, let's say I say, is this only a co-ed school or is this a co-ed? Are these schools co-ed or is this only one single gender? And the interviewers would say, like, how will it change your estimation of number of schools? Because that will not impact, because I'm still going to consider the number of students and number of schools per number of students or so. So, that becomes a question which does not have any following implication only. Even if I get the answer, it is not going to change anything. So that's an irrelevant question. Yeah. So now, guys, I am hoping you are all structuring your thoughts in terms of how do we go ahead with the problem now that we have the answers to clarificatory questions. Please start exploring the chat box again soon. I am not solving the
Saloni, so instead of asking them to type on the chat box, structure is a thing which, like, it'll be better if they can explain, if they can raise their hand and unmute
sure.
themselves.
Yeah,
So it'll
that
be
is
too
also
tedious
something
for
we can
type.
do.
Yeah, to type.
Sure.
Yeah, so guys, take 2 minutes and just structure down your thoughts. All the answers are given for the clarificatory questions. Just let us know how you would structure this particular problem. We don't want to go to the final answer. We just want to know what are some of the factors which you are taking into consideration. And if you've missed on any particular factor, we'll tell you. So if anyone is ready, he or she can raise his or her hand and we can ask the host to unmute them.
Whenever anyone is ready or wants to take a shot, please raise your hand and we will unmute you and we can go ahead.
And like, please don't be hesitant enough. Like, even if there are some things which you've missed, like, it's absolutely all right. Because even I remember during my first case interview, I had literally like, I did not consider the main aspects of the case which was asked. So that was the worst interview which I've had in my life. The first which was discussed with my buddy. So it's absolutely all right, even if you miss out on any particular aspect as of now.
Yeah, Ritu, that's an interesting thought. Just looks a little complicated to go ahead, but sure, we can try doing that.
Ritu, would you like to take a shot?
Let's run through the thought that you're having currently, and maybe then we
Yeah.
see how to go about it.
And can you just unmute Ritu once?
Yeah, that's done.
Yeah, actually, I just thought that we may categorize schools, those top-notch branded names, like we have in Delhi, around Delhi, there's DPS and Rayan International, Amity, such names. I'm not aware of the names in Mumbai. And the like average schools, the local schools. So then, I didn't really know I don't really know ki aage, how can we go ahead with this? Matlab, the incomes of the people will be a factor to be considered,
Right,
we can
right.
consider here. But I don't know how to go ahead, so I didn't raise my hand. That's why.
Okay, sure. So yeah, income is a thing which we'll need to consider here. So that's apt.
That's a good thought. Right line of thought. Kushal, in the interest of time, maybe you want to
Yeah.
probably just explain how the approach or okay, we
I think
have Gaurav
Gaurav has
Jogani
raised
who's
his
raised
hand.
his hand.
Yeah, he's
The area of the school.
So area of the school has an let's say a school has a very high like let's say it has its own park, garden, everything. But then what do we want to do? Like how do you want to utilize that information? Like what is the thought process there? Sorry, I'm mute again. Like I just want to understand how you're thinking.
Sayam Shah has given his answer in the chat box. So he says the average school has 800 to 900 students. Population of Mumbai is around 2 crore. In India, around 40% of the population is below 18. So 80 lakhs below 18 population. So approximately 10,000 schools. That's what his answer is.
Right. And Gaurav, I think even to your thought, right, in terms of area of school, it is very valid. Matlab, the way you're thinking is right. But I would just, instead of calling it as an area, because area we look at it in terms of geographical space, I would call it capacity. Because capacity means the students that you can accommodate or the number of students per class is what I think you were thinking. But area looks like a geographical area. Sure, Rishabh, you can also try.
Yes, I was thinking like we can divide it within the boards. Like one is CBSE Central Board, the second is ICSE, and the third is others like State Board and all. So that would be very easy, and we will get the data also easily. Like in this region, how many particular boards are there? CBSE, ICSE, and 3. We can map into that category.
Interesting. I think that is also an interesting approach. So there is no right approach, right? There's nothing like this is the right way. Even if we talk about like let's say even if Kushal now helps you out with one approach, there can be multiple other approaches also. Just about how do you think of it end to end. So Kushal, I think
Yeah, sure.
Why don't
so good
you
approach is taken by all of you. So basically, what an ideal approach to this particular case would be that you have to ensure that you have some formula in your mind to get to that particular number of school. So whenever a particular guesstimate is given to you, you should try to at least have one formula so that that particular formula would help you to calculate the number of schools in Mumbai. So in this particular case, what I would do is that I would just like write it on a piece of paper. Schools in Mumbai would be number of school going children in Mumbai whole upon average students per school. So total number of children in Mumbai who are going to school whole upon how many students are there in one particular school. Then while calculating the numerator, which is number of school going children in Mumbai, I like divide the population of Mumbai. So like you will get to know these demographics once you read the case interview books as well. So I'll divide the population of Mumbai, which is approximately 2 crores, into this particular category. So as we know that India is a young country, so I'll assume that 50% of the population is below the age of 25. So I'll assume that 1 crore of population is below the age of 25. And then I'll assume a equal split between the grade 1 to 3, 4 to 10, then grade junior KG to senior KG, then grade 1 to 5, 6 to 10. So basically this will help me in order to get the number of students who are there in each grade. Then I'll consider the income segment as well. Why consider the income segment? Because the ones who are below party line, they won't send their children to school. Like there might be a possibility that some of the parents would send the children only up to grade 5, or some of them would like send the children only up to grade 10, and not further education would be done. So then I'll split it into upper middle class, then middle class, lower middle class, and below party line. And then I'll assume a particular number, say a percentage, like how many percentage of these students are actually going to school and up to what grade. So once I get the total number of school going children, then I'll simply calculate the average number of students per school. So again, interesting approach here would be that I'll divide the number of schools into 3 categories: large school, medium school, and small school. Not every school would have the same number of students. So let's take an example, like in an area like Andheri or in an area like Powai or Bandra, how many schools would be there? Let's take an example, like you just have to tell it to the interviewer that let's take an example that there might be 10 schools in Andheri, out of which 5 are large school, 3 are medium school, and 2 are small schools. And you have to assume a number that in a large school, how many students would be there? In a medium school, how many students would be there? And after this, you get an average number of student in one school. You have to divide the total number of school going children whole upon the total number of students in one school. And by this formula, you can get the total number of schools in Mumbai. Now, this was from the demand perspective. One more thing which is important is to do a sanity check over here. So what is a sanity check? Is that whatever number you are giving, you have to ensure whether it makes sense that this number is actually correct or whether it is closer to the fair value or not. So a sanity check over here would be that let's take an example. So Mumbai is divided into, so if we take the area of Mumbai, it might be 60 kilometers into 10 kilometers. So it's roughly it's 600 kilometers square. So let's take an example that in 1 kilometer square, there might be 2 schools. So in 600 kilometer squares, there might be 1200 schools. So this is a simple example of sanity check. And it is very important that you do a sanity check from a supply perspective if you have solved the problem from a demand perspective. So this was a problem which was solved from a demand perspective because you were calculating the number of schools based on the demand of the students who are going to that school. And as a sanity check, you are doing कि कितने schools हो सकते हैं ये area में, मतलब 1 square kilometer में 2 schools है, तो supply side हो गया है. So 600 square kilometer में 1200 schools रह गए. So this is a like overall approach to this particular guesstimate.
And all your questions and thoughts are very valid. So I am just amazed at how you guys are able to figure it out, at least in the first way. Because the way you laid out, that's what's important. So I have a tough time in getting to the numbers and actually calculating it through. But what's worked for me is actually laying it out, saying that, when it comes to me, or after I've taken those 2 minutes, I would come back saying that, okay, I have to arrive at number of schools. And the way I'm thinking is that I will look at the total population of school going students by the capacity of per school. Now again, and this is how I'm structuring now, like how do I lay a framework or how do I do the structure? So this is the broad approach that I've laid down. And now I know that this division is going to give me, I have formed an equation or I've laid down the approach that number of school going students divided by capacity per school is equal to number of schools. So now I start drilling down first on the first part. How many are the number of school going students? And uske liye you follow the approach that Kushal just said. And then you'll arrive at certain number. Then similarly, how many other capacity per school? So there you looked at, say, the geographical division of, large school, medium school, small school, capacity per class. And it doesn't have to be an end-to-end answer that you have to come up with. Always remember a case is always a conversational thing, because even when you go to a client, you will need his inputs every now and then in terms of data, what has worked, what has not worked, what is his experience. So you always keep getting inputs. You are not supposed to know it all. So I can always ask Like just as we ask the clarificatory questions, I can always ask in terms of, do we have any information on how many large schools are there, or is it fair to assume, or can I assume, let's say, average 40 students per class is the average, or things like that. And that's how you then together collectively arrive at the approach or the final solution to it. It's a very conversational thing. It's not like you need to know it all and you figure out, because the approach is what is relevant in the end anyway. So yeah, I think this is what we want to cover today with you, and what we plan to do as we go ahead in this as we go ahead with some of the other sessions, we want to try covering each. So today we tried covering only guesstimate out of the 5 or 6 case types. So next, I think in the subsequent sessions, we'll try covering 1 or 2 examples from, say, profitability, market entry, market share, and all the other categories also, so that at least each of you has solved, let's say, 4 or 5 cases and gets a good hand on how the overall framework and how to think it better, along with some of the other aspects like, say, softer nuances around communication skills, soft skills, and all of that. That is also going to be covered in some of the coming up 180 DC sessions. And now, any other questions that you may have, we will park we've parked the last 10 minutes for your questions. So yes.
So guys, any questions that you all have, you all can simply post it on the chat box and we will communicate it further to the mentors. So one question that we received, which is for Kushal, is that since you are a part of Aditya Birla and you have had a small stint, as you mentioned, in the corporate strategy department. So what corporate finance department. So what difference can you cite between working in a think tank, of a huge conglomerate, than working for a consulting company, like vis-a-vis the kind of work you do, basically?
Yeah, good question. So basically, I have not worked in a consulting company, so I might not be able to comment appropriately, like how is the work profile in a consulting company. But as far as my particular work profile was concerned in corporate finance department, it's like I have to evaluate all the mergers and acquisition opportunities for Aditya Birla Group companies, all the 6 listed companies, as well as the unlisted companies. Then I had to basically prepare those financial models. So, like we have to prepare all the financial models of the companies. I have to prepare the DCF model in terms of what will be the net present value and the IRR if we enter into this project or if we acquire this particular company. So it was more of an investment bank perspective. Like it was like an investment bank. How does an investment bank operate? So it basically helps companies to acquire other companies. So that is the main job of an investment bank. So I can say that corporate finance is nothing but an in-house investment bank of Aditya Birla Group, and it is more related towards the finance side and not towards the non-finance side. So as the name also suggests, it is corporate finance. So we have to deal more on the financial and the monetary aspect, and we don't deal much on the non-financials and the non-monetary aspect. So that is one of a difference, that if you go into consulting, you have to analyze it from a bird's point of view. So from a bird's eye point of view. And that is the main difference, that you have to analyze it from an overall perspective and not only from a finance perspective.
Right.
So that is my work profile in Aditya Birla Group, and I think this is the main difference.
Perfect.
So Aditi, to your question, which is around how do we develop this critical thinking or structured thinking at sitting at a homes. So the ways to go about it is, when you say you're reading the books or having consulting material, that alone isn't sufficient, and it's also about how you read that book or how you cover that book. So the more and more case interviews you solve, of course, it helps, but merely reading the book doesn't. Or even, let's say, if you're reading a book, you read the case problem statement, and you read and then you start thinking that, what are the preliminary questions I would have asked. Then you see what are the answers there. Then again, next you have to start preparing your own structure, because as long as I'm just reading it, it will not help me develop that skill. So then you start preparing your own structure and see whether that structure, what would have been the questions you would have asked, and then see if the answer to that case statement that is given in the book is actually meeting, is your structure covering everything, or if not, then figure out what is it that you have missed. And that is one important attribute. The second is, just as Kushal was saying, start becoming very observant or keeping your mind running. And as a consultant, you will eventually realize that keeps happening to you. Like, let's say I go to a shop or I go to any restaurant, and I realize that, okay, this person has just served me this, or he's using this cutlery. And I feel that, oh, this is such a cost This is just a huge loss for him. And I realized, okay, had he spaced this better, or had he just moved around his
Yeah.
sitting arrangement this way, then he could have fit in 10 more chairs and then would have been X more customers and hence X more revenue. That's how you need to start training your mind, that as everywhere that you're around, you start observing things, you start thinking through, and you start thinking that if I was that business owner, what could I have done to take this to the next level? Yeah.
So we have
Uh,
got another question from Vriti. She asks, how does due diligence work and how does it play a role in consulting?
Right. So see, due diligence has multiple aspects, right? There is financial due diligence, there is commercial due diligence, then there is say legal due diligence and all of those aspects as well. Now, financial due diligence is very common amongst the big four who do it, and CDD is something that the management consulting firms usually do. Now, how does it work? If you think of any deal, mergers and acquisition deal that is supposed to happen, now if and then there are, so in any transaction deal that has to happen, there is one, the company that is selling it, or is selling a stake or is getting sold. There is an acquiring company. There is an investment banking firm which is actually helping this happen. So the financial due diligence companies will actually prepare a model and will deep dive into the model which is prepared by the investment banker in terms of what are the financial projections of the company. Now, in terms of financial projections, how is it usually prepared? They will say that, this company is going to sell 1,000 products next year, and 1,000 products pay 10 rupees per product is the revenue. So when I'm doing due diligence, I will check whether that 1,000 into 10 has been correctly punched, and whether that is achieved, whether, how the growth rate is applied correctly. There is no problem in that in terms of the financial metrics part of it. But as a consultant, the diligence that you do, commercial due diligence, you will start questioning whether the 1,000 products that are sold, that assumption that you've made, is that achievable or not? How real is that 1,000? What is the industry outlook going to be? What is their achievable market share? And hence, whether that 1,000 is achievable or not. So you start questioning on the operation side. Yeah.
Yeah, right. We have another question. As both of you are CA aspirants, what suggestion would you give to the future aspirants of CA who are dreaming to get into the top tier consulting firms?
Interesting. So Kushal here is our All India rank 5. So I will let him take this question, or
I'm
Kushal?
sorry, I just missed this question. Can you please repeat?
So she says that basically as a top, what in addition to CA should one do? Like, what is it that one needs to do in along with CA to actually be able to get into BCG or any other consulting firm?
Okay. So I think, like, again, a very relevant question. So some of the habits which I told you that which might be relevant is that you need to start observing things. That is one of the most important thing. Thanks for asking this question. One of the things which I forgot to highlight in the previous discussion as well is that you need to be very quick and very fast with your mental mathematics as well. So there might be some times, there might be some cases where you are literally required to like calculate a very like in detail numbers, and that time the interviewer is going to test your mental mathematics as well. So there can be questions which the interviewer can ask, like these type of questions: what percentage of 72 is 9, or what is 100 divided by 7, in order to stress test and in order to check whether you are able to perform those calculations accurately. So for this, actually, I had registered on the website Case Interview by Victor Cheng, and on that website I had practiced a lot of mental mathematics problem. Now this is like 100 by 7 and what percentage of 72 is 9. These are like straightforward questions, but the reason why I'm telling you is that there are numbers which are given to you in terms of million, billions, crores, lakhs. So you get confused by looking at so huge numbers. There might be a possibility that you miss out on 1 0 and your answer would change completely, and that might have a huge impact. So this is one of the mistake which you should avoid, that you should be clear with your mental mathematics, and you should definitely avoid any mathematics error in your calculation. So this would be the second advice, that stay in touch with mental mathematics and try to solve as many questions mentally without using calculator. Like all of us CA aspirants, we use calculators, and that's why we are not good with mental mathematics. So that's like, that would be one more advice. And the last thing would be that in order to get into these consulting firms, try to like read a lot of case interview books as well, and try to just Google a lot of cases or a lot of real life problems which are happening. and think as if you are hired as a consultant. How would you approach that particular case study? So it's as if you are hired by a company, and you just have to act as if you are hired by that company, and how would you approach that problem? So wherever you go, just think as if, oh, okay, I'm here. So what particular problem might be there? If you go to a Starbucks, say in Mumbai, then just think if the revenue would be dropping, what might be the reasons? Where can this particular entity improve? Whether the line, whether the queue is very long, whether they are accepting payment through cash and credit card. Observe as many things as possible. How is the seating arrangement? So, once you start observing things, that will help you in order to generate your curiosity. And that would be the best way to get into these consulting firms.
And on a very realistic basis, you need to be able to get shortlisted, right? So when you say that other than MBA, what is the other way? Your CV needs to have one uh, spike point, or one something that is really outstanding about you, or which shows that you've been very determined or perseverant in life, which can be even about your hobby, or which can be about anything, right? It can be about, let's say, if you are really passionate about dancing, then have you gone ahead and participated in competitions? Have you done a particular course or so? So whatever you have done, like, try to actually show that, okay, how do you really stand out, or what is it that you have done um, to differentiate yourself, or to just, which shows that you're very determined, which will be a perseverant, you can actually uh, um, stand out amongst the crowd. That's all.
And Saloni was asked about mental maths in her last round, which was the fourth round. So that's also pretty important, that you should be calm, and you should be very confident in order to answer. So just don't get panic if a abrupt question is asked to you.
Yeah, so one of the rounds I was asked something which was very confusing and difficult, so I panicked and I messed up on the math. So then I was questioned on the math.
Yeah, so just one clarification which everyone is asking for is just restating, or maybe like, communicating it to the 180 DC team personally, and we can circulate it to everyone, is which website / course
Yeah.
you're
Yeah,
signed up
I'll
to solve.
circulate that to you. I don't remember the exact website name as of now. It's Victor Cheng's website, Case Interview Cracked. I think it's caseinterviewscracked.com, but I'll
Okay,
just get back to you.
yeah, no
I'll need
problem.
it.
Take your time, Kushal. You can
Yeah.
inform it to me, and I can pass it on to all the participants of the team.
Yeah.
Are there
Awesome,
any
guys.
questions?
Can I just ask something?
Sure.
Sure.
Actually, ऐसा लग रहा था कि Saloni Di was reading my Mann Ki Baat when she mentioned about dance, because I was just going to ask about this. Actually, I've joined a regular college, a good regular college, and I'm pursuing chartered accountancy as well. Now I'm very much into dance, and I have joined the dance society there. But my parents fear that I'm gonna fail in CA, and I'm gonna leave CA for dance or something like that. So how can I convince them? And actually, please state the importance of extracurriculars while pursuing professional courses like CA. Many CA students just engross themselves into academics, and everyone nowadays mentions about the importance of co-curriculars, like Kushal Bhaiya's YouTube channel as well is a lot focused on developing your personality and all. So
Thanks a lot. You watch my videos. I'm honored.
Sure. So I think it's just about, bringing in the balance. And when it comes to, say, convincing parents, they really do think the best for you. And they are concerned because they probably have, even if your parents are chartered accountants, and in their time it was different because they did not have the necessary guidance. They have actually started right from the scratch. They do not have the material or the coaching classes and all. Whereas for us, the kind of challenges are a little different in terms of being overwhelmed and stressed all the time. So finding a break to actually unwind and pursue something which you really like or are passionate about very seriously really helps you give a rejuvenation, a kind of right set of break, utilization, and also makes you feel more accomplished or satisfied at the end of the day, because you do not have to sacrifice for achieving things. Like, even say along my CA journey, or I'm sure if Kushal has done a lot of stuff, he'll be able to talk about it. It was just about, I chose on my priorities. Like, let's say I made certain other difficult choices and hence gave up on XYZ things. But you can always optimize definitely for 3 or 4 things in life. And you need to choose and onto what is it that is the most priority 3 or 4 things for you. Yeah, that's how I would sum it up. Yeah. Kushal, would you like to add anything to that?
I agree with you. So it's very important to stay in touch with extracurricular activities as such. even if like you have a strong academic but you don't have extracurricular, these companies tend to ask these can sorry, someone is asking Kushal where I okay. So not this time. Next time I'll do it. So basically, these companies look for candidates who are an overall like who have this kind of overall personality, all-rounder type of a personality. So they want academics as well as extracurriculars, and that's why I always tell each and every CA aspirant to focus on academics as well as extracurricular activities. That's the main reason, because the thinking of these companies is that since they hire rank holders mostly, so they would be very well versed with the technical knowledge which has been taught in the CA curriculum. What they're looking for is whether they are able to communicate and articulate their thoughts effectively. That is the differentiating factor between a person who gets into any company as compared to a person who is rejected by other company. So your other skills like communication skills, presentation skills, leadership skills, which you can demonstrate only if you've done some extracurricular activities in your college life or in your hostel life if you're staying in a hostel, or in any particular activity if you're volunteering in an NGO. So these all matter a lot.
Okay, I think that was a very fruitful question and answer session. So with this, we have finally come to an end for our first session, and I would wholeheartedly like to thank Saloni and Kushal for devoting a part of their busy schedule in order to enlighten our students and educate them about the various nuances, especially of a field as diverse as consulting, in less than a 90-minute time span. And the way they handled the question and answers and gave us so many resources is just so overwhelming and nice of them. And most importantly, I would also like to thank Kanupriya ma'am, our faculty advisor, who has tirelessly worked and cooperated with us throughout the session, and our principal, Pooja Ramchandani ma'am, who's always guiding us and supporting us, as you saw. And most importantly, we look forward to seeing you all in the next session scheduled on Saturday, the 3rd of April. The details regarding the same will be circulated in the next few days. But before we end the session, I would like everyone to switch on their cameras so we can just quickly take a picture for the gram.
Interesting. So maybe we should stop sharing the screen or have the screen like of 180 DC first page. So then you'll have
Yeah. I think we can
interesting.
do both.
But
Yeah,
thank you so much. Like, thank you all for attending. You all were an amazing audience. Thanks a lot to the 180 DC team for actually taking up this initiative. It's amazing to see you all so engaged and involved, and that it's actually helping out. And of course, thank you so much, Kanupriya ma'am, for actually also inspiring this team to keep going on. I think the last few months have been tough for the team, as they have been saying, and of course, Pooja ma'am for all the support by the college. So yes, this has been amazing. And thank you
Thanks
so much.
everyone. Yeah, thanks everyone for being an amazing audience. Like the clarificatory questions and the structures were like very appropriate and up to the mark. So frankly, I had not asked these type of questions when I was asked this type of a case interview. So again, like thank you so much for attending, and I hope we could add some value in terms of what exactly is consulting and how to tackle a case interview. So thank you so much once again.
yeah, thank you so much, guys. See you and stay safe. And in case anyone has any doubts, they can always reach out to me or someone from the 180 DC team, and we'll get in touch with Saloni and Kushal. But that's it for now. Thank you so much, guys. See you soon.
See you all soon.
Yeah,
See you all
thank you.
soon. And keep staying safe. Yes.
Yeah.
Thank you all.
And
Thanks
please
a lot.
please fill the feedback form which we have posted on the chat. That would mean a lot to us. Thank you.
Thanks. Thanks.
Thank you. I would request the 180 DC team to stay on the call.